Okay. We left off the last time in Shechitah, in Mitzvah Sefer Shechitah, Mitzvah Kuf Mem Vav. I just wanted to do the text at the end of the mitzvah. He says, V'loshen Sifri v'zavachta, and l'chei, what he's bringing the Sifri for, we have to understand how he does it, is that to answer all the questions that maybe the mitzvah Shechitah is only Aseh, and he's trying to bring a Sifri, which is the Matiki Hashmur, that it's a little bit more than this, and that it's a mitzvah. V'loshen Sifri v'zavachta ma mukdoshim b'shchita af chulin b'shchita. Okay. This we'll come back to soon. This is very difficult. Ma mukdoshim b'shchita af chulin b'shchita. What does he want from this? Okay. You see, there are those, if we recall, that claim that shchitas chulin and mukdoshim is one mitzvah. That's where the Rabbi Yeshua Nogid was alluding to. But that's very odd because the Rambam in Sherish Yud Beis clearly says that that mukdoshim is part of the mitzvah of Oila, or the mitzvah of Chatos, or the mitzvah of Osham, or mitzvah of Shlomim, and l'chayr doesn't do it shchitas chulin. And however, the Sifri says, Zavachta ma mukdoshim b'shchita af chulin b'shchita. So there's some text in the Sifri that says, say, learn this from Kashet Tzivisicha, ma mukdoshim b'shchita af chulin b'shchita. If that's correct, that's very good, because then we know that Kashet Tzivisicha, there's a tzivui. But the Ram doesn't have that text. So it's a little bit confusing what he wants. So maybe he means ma mukdoshim is a mitzvah, but it's chelkei a mitzvah. Af chulin is a mitzvah. And there it's not chelkei mitzvah, it's just be a separate mitzvah. The Sifri, from the word v'zavachta, since the word which could have been used by Kochim and is used by Chulin, so it's trying to equate the two. He's learning that they're both mitzvahs. Even though, and that he learns that's the command of the Sifri, is the Matiki Hashmur, is telling us something about Minyan mitzvahs. Ma mukdoshim b'shchita, and it's a mitzvah. Af chulin b'shchita, and it's a mitzvah. There it's chelkei mitzvah because it's a mitzvah. But the question how you figure it out and how you put it in, whether it's a separate mitzvah or part of another mitzvah, that depends on Sherish Yud Beis. But here in shchitas chulin, where Sherish Yud Beis doesn't apply, we have it's a separate mitzvah, minyan mitzvahs. Okay. Now, Kashet Tzivisicha melamed shenitztave Moshe al hakona v'al avoishet v'al roiv echod b'oif v'al roiv shnayim b'behema. That shchitas behema requires 2 Simanim, and shchitas oif, it's roiv of 2 Simanim, and roiv siman echod and oif is good enough. So l'chera, we derive 2 things from this. From Kashet Tzivisicha, somehow we'll see that there's a mitzvah of Shechitah, and also there's a mitzvah of Shechitas Oif, because there's no posuk in the Oif, in the Torah about Shechitas Oif. The Ram Mishnah Torah derives Shechitas Oif from a hekesh in V'shofach, that the same way the shvicha by chaya, the shvicha by oif, and the same way shvicha by chaya is a shchita, shvicha by oif is a shchita. But here it's from kashet zivisicha. That is very interesting. What does he want in the kasha tzivisicha? Just that it's a tzivui? Or maybe he wants, like he says in Akdoma. The Rambam Akdoma to Mishnah Torah says, he starts off, Kol HaMitzvos shenitnu loy leMoshe b'Sinai b'ferusha nitnu. There's a paradigm, a model for Mitzvas HaTorah. They were given is Torah shebiksav with a pirush of Moshe Rabbeinu. Shenema v'yetna lecho es luchas ha'evan v'aTorah v'amitzvah. Torah zo Torah shebiksav. The mitzvah consists of Torah shebiksav. V'amitzvah zu pirusha. And that's the pirush makubal from Moshe Rabbeinu. V'tzivonu la'aseh is ha'Torah al pi ha'mitzvah. The Torah, the mitzvah, should be done according to the guidelines of Torah Sheba'al Peh. U'mitzvah hi anikres Torah Sheba'al Peh. So then maybe the Rambam is saying, Kasher v'tzicha, this fits into the paradigm, Kasher v'tzicha, this fits in the paradigm of a mitzvah Torah Shebiksav with an explanation in Torah Sheba'al Peh, and therefore it's a mitzvah. In fact, the Rambam in Hilchos Shechitah, Perek Aleph, Halacha Daled, V'omar v'zovachta mi b'kocho, v'goymer kashet tzivisicho, v'yachalta b'sharecho, v'goymer, shekol hadvorim ho'elu al peh tzivo bohen, kishar Torah sheba'al peh, shehi anikris mitzvah, k'mo shebi'anu b'tchilas chibur zeh. So the Rambam himself refers to this, and that the kasher v'tzicha is the Torah Sheba'al Peh, that the mitzvah is supposed to be done according to. So it means that kasher v'tzicha is mufurish, that it's a Kabbalah from Moshe Rabbeinu, not the way Rashi learns in Chulin, that it's a Chochet Stadis. Rashi says in Chulin kasher v'tzicha and Chav Chesed and Aleph limed shenispar shaloi mitzvah shechitah al peh. There's something peculiar about shechitah. Lehechon dehechon tzivo b'ksav. Since it's not the kashet tzivisicho that mitzvah means Torah Sheba'al Peh, since we don't find any place in Torah Sheba'al, so it must be mitzvah Torah Sheba'al Peh. Interesting approach to Rashi, diametrically opposed to the Rambam. In fact, the Rambam goes much further than this in Perek Aleph Halacha Daled, and he says like this. Just one second. He says like this. He says, Zvicha zo ha'amur b'Torah stam soch leforish oisa. What is this zvicha? How do you do it? V'leide be'eze mokoy min ha'behema sheichten. The place of shechita. Where is it? V'kamo shir ha'shechita. How much do you have to do with shechita? That's loiv shnayim, loiv or tei simon, roiv of 2 simon or 1 simon. And roiv, ube'eze dova sheichten. What constitutes a sakin for shechita? Umosai sheichten. V'hechon sheichten. V'ketzat sheichten. Umahen advor mafsinas shechita, the hilchos shechita. Umi hu ha-sheichet. And who's kosher shechita? This all according to the Rambam, the hilchos shechita, not a lochel mishmi Sinai, as we'll see the Ramban says, but all this is a pirush makubal in what is called the zavachta, pirush makubal of Moshe Rabbeinu, kashet sivisicho. Ramban in Dvorim Yud Beis Chaf Aleph v'tam bezavachta kashet sicho al das Rabbeinu kashet sivisicho al pe mehuchos me'alocha l'Moshe miSinai. This issue of whether the Hilchos Shechitah is halacha from miSinai or Teresh al Pez, Rashi learns the Pirush Makubal, the Pri Megadim, the Zakdomat Yodeya, touches on this. But look over there and see what's over here and decide for yourself what we should do. But I'm just telling you, there is a Pri Megadim, you should just know. So this l'cheira then is the Ram's Raya that v'zavachto is a mitzvah. It's not just an isa that you can't eat without shechita. V'zavachto v'yochalto is if you want to eat, you have to do shechita. Now, next mitzvah, the mitzvah of Kisui HaDam. והמצווה השבע והארבעים ומאה היא שציוונו לחסס דם חיה ויויף. אחה שנשחט. This depends upon Shechitah. After Shechitah, you should mechase dam chayev v'yoif. This is the way Ibn Tibbon cans it. However, Kapach says, Bekisui, it's the tzivui is not lechasos, there's no infinitive, but it's Bekisui Adom be'es Shechitah. It's not the time of Shechitah sa'oif, oi chaya. So there's also a reverse of the say the voif chaya. Not that it's very important, it might give us a clue. Ibn Tibbon reverses the order. And he also says that it's l'chases. And the Arabic source from the source supports Kapach. My impression is Ibn Tibbon has done something over here, which he does in many times. This is Kedalko B'Kodesh, that he uses the Minyan HaKotzer or other source in the Rambam to help him translate the text of the Rambam over here, because they're written in Hebrew. And there, in the Minyan HaKotzer, it says, L'chasos dam chaye v'yoif. A reversal of the order, and it says l'chasos. You have the infinitive exactly the way it appears in Ibn Tibbon. Also in the Protei Mitzvos is also like that. It says l'chasos dam chaye v'yoif. And in Hilchos Shechitah, Perek Yud Dalid Aloch Aleph, Mitzvah say lechasas dam shchitas chaye tehera oif toho. So this may be the source of Ibn Tibbon. I'm not sure if there are any ramifications of this, but it just shows you possibly how he might be going about translating the text. Okay, next. Here, if it says l'chases, the infinitive, it's clearly saying that there's a ma'aseh mitzvah, there's a ma'aseh, there's a pula. As the Rambam points out that there are mitzvahs that are pula in the beginning of Shorish Tes. And therefore, that's the explanation of Kisui Ruach, Disol Ruach. Excuse me, Kisui, if he was Machased HaDam, let's start this way. If he was Machased HaDam, Biyadayim, and then the Ruach blew the off away, he's not chayiv to Machas again. Why? Because the Ma'aseh Mitzvah is Mekayim the Mitzvah. But if it's Kisui HaRuach, it's a whole different story. Because a whole different story that since there is a Kisui on it, there's no chiyuv, but there was no kiyum mitzvah. So if the wind blows it off, the chiyuv is dam magula to mechasa. So if the dam is not magula, so there's no chiyuv. But if the wind blows it, then you chayiv. Blows away the offer on top of it, you chayiv to mechasa because there was no ma'aseh mitzvah, and there is a ma'aseh mitzvah, and this is the sifra and teres kohan in achrei mois v'shafa v'kisa mitzvah shechasenu hu. That's the sheichet kisov v'nisgale potem l'chasais if he was mechasa, but kisov ruach chayiv l'chasais if it was nisgale. And this Reb Gershon, he has a pirush on it on the Chafetz Chaim's Teres Kohanim. He also says that that's the pshat, that since there was a Ma'aseh Mitzvah with the Gavra and he was mechasa, therefore he's potter. And the Rambam in Hilchos Shechitah Perek Yudal Halacha Zayin and Tes Kiso v'nivel HaDam b'karka im mishum monika chayav l'chasais, because you see something. If it's nivla, it's like kisah ruach. It's covered. There's no chiyuv. Now, let me go back and do something over here. I didn't want to start with this, but it's very interesting. I'm in the Vuchim and what's happened with Kisui HaDam. The question is why it's after the mitzvah Shechitah. So the very simple approach is that Kisui HaDam depends upon Shechitah. If there's no Shechitah, there's no mitzvah Kisui HaDam. This will create problems depending on how you're going to deal with it, whether there's a mitzvah Kisui HaDam and a Shechitah's ben Pekur, because it's not really a Shechitah. Okay? But let's assume for the moment it depends upon Shechitah, and that's why the Rama puts it over here. There's another approach you can start. There's a Ram Sefer more in the Vuchim. Just before, I want to add something. So the proper place to put this mitzvah is in Hilchos Shechitah because it depends upon Shechitah. The Rambam puts it in Hilchos Shechitah, and he says Acha Shechitah over here, and it depends upon Shechitah. He seems to make it dependent on Shechitah here also. So that would be very good. In the Meir and the Vuchim, it's not clear that this is the proper approach. What the tam of the mitzvah is, or he says the tam of the mitzvah is menias avodas hashedim. That's what he says in the Meir, that it's to meneya avodas hashedim with the dam of the chay and the oif. That's why I have to mechase it. So l'cheira, if that's the case, the Mekayim should be in Hilchos Avodah Zarah, not in Hilchos Shechitah, maybe. The Rambam in the Vuchim Chelek Gimel Perek Mem Vav, ubo haTeira hashleimo liyodeho lohosir elo achaloyim hanemonim v'osro achilas hadam. The Torah it prohibits eating of blood. V'osro chizot b'Yisrael k'mo she'osa b'Avodah Zarah b'Shavah. And the same way the Torah goes out of his way to mechazik the Isa of the Zorah, it's also mechazik the Isa of Dom. I guess because it is some entangling between Kisui Bidam and Avodah Zorah. Oma Yisale v'nosati fonai b'nefesh ha'ocheles zadom. Kmo shekosav v'noisim mizal lamorach v'nosati es ponai bo'ishahu. And the Ram it takes literally v'nosati ponai. There's something over here very chomer, even though it's only chiv koles, but it's very chomer dikisa, and it's like avodah zarah. V'leibo ze haloshin b'mitzvah shlishis muvad avodah zarah v'achilas dom. She'achilas ha'hoyse mevia lemin mimini avodah zarah. V'hi avodas hashem. The Rambam is very clear that avodas hashem is the avodah zarah. V'shmo, he says like this. Excuse me. V'tahara HaDam u'shmo somo oiso metayim ma she'agia boy. V'zeisa al aharoin v'al begodov v'kidesh hu u'begodov v'sivsa lahazais. So sorry, I stopped. V'achilos, I left that alone. It just didn't make. That's why I had problems reading it. V'achilas dam she'achilos ha'hoyisa mevia lemin mimini avodah zarah v'hi avodas hashem. V'taharo hadam. That's a separate thing. V'somo oisa metayher k'moy she'agia boy. V'zeis al alam v'abogodov v'kidesh hu u'begodov v'tzivsa l'hazois al mizbeach v'somo avoda kula v'shom avoda kula shoif chashom v'lo oisva. It's very important that the dam should be dispersed, not to gather together. And those that gather together, it's a problem. V'omar v'ani nesati v'lochem al mizbeach l'chaper. On the mizbeach is l'chaper v'shom yishofech u'kmo she'omar v'es HaDam v'es kol HaDam yishofech v'dam zvachari yishofech al mizbach Hashem Elokecha v'tzivu lishbach dam kol behemo she'tishochet af al pi she'einu korban omar al oretz tishbachenu kamayim v'yachar kach. So by Shechitah's behemo, it's kamayim, whatever that means. V'yachar kach hizir miliskabei tzvivo v'lecho shom, and not to have it in a certain place and to eat around the dam. Very strange custom. Omar v'lei seichel HaDam. He changes the whole seichel HaDam for what Chazal, the Pirush Makubal, to eat before tefillah, to eat at the time of Harugi Bezdin, all the different isurim that he quotes, Ben Seir Moire, but it's to eat around the dam. V'kashi hismid Miriam v'Muroyim, people who are married, v'nimshchu achrei ha'mufusam asher godlu alav u'lischaber ha'shedim bi'ochlam sov v'adam. This is the way you connect it to the shader. Okay, beseder. That's why it should be allowed to tishmacharamayim, not to have it in a pool and eat around it. Sivo yis'aleh shelo yochal bosa taivo b'midbakal. Then he says like this, a very strange thing. He says the isa bosa taivo in the midbo is hachokas shchedim. I don't know why it was only b'midbo. No. And then he says avo yiyeh hakol shlomim, and he's quoting. Okay, good. That was bosa taiva. Ubeya lono si bosa kedei shishpach hadom al mizbeach vo iskapsu svivov. The reason why the dam is on the mizbeach, there should not be this leisochol soviv al adam. V'omar leman asher yoviu b'nei Yisrael v'lo yispchu oid ezivcheim lasi'irim avol nishar inyan hachaye v'oif mibnei shelo yovo korban mechaye v'loi yikov oif shlomim. There's no shlomim by oif. I don't know why shlomim is an important thing. There's no shlomim by oif, and there's machal no korban by chaye. So very strange. If it's al mizbeach, the side of mizbeach l'chaper, then you don't have to worry about Kisui HaDam, and it really goes to the mizbeach. But if there's no more mizbeach, and really really Bosa Taiva also should have gone Shlomim. Only bites the hell shah. But what do? So therefore, since there's no Shlomim of Oif, and there's no Korban from Chaya, Avon Nisha Inyan Achaya v'Oif Mibnei Shelo Yova Korban Mechaya Klal v'Yikov Oif Shlomim v'Tziva Yis'ale Achazeh Shekol Chaya v'Oif Shemutali Ochlam Kisheyishochet Yichase Domoy Ba'ofa Ad Shelo Yiskapsu Alo Lecho Sviva V'Nishlamo HaKavona Lahofi or Achvo Bein Misha Ochazom Shade Be'emes Ubein Shadehem. Okay, we'll say that. I'm not sure exactly. He's trying to explain why this is not by Behema, not by Chaya. And I'm not sure, if since the Shlomim by Bosa Taiva is not Lederes, it's not clear to me what's the mania of Achilas Dom Sviva, l'chayr should require Kisui. I'm very confused in the Rambam, but that's l'chayr what he's saying. Now, let's continue over here. The Rambam in Perek Yudal Shechitah Aloch Aleph says Mitzvah say lechasas dam Shechitah Chaye Tehera or Oif Toho. There he doesn't mention the word Shechitah. He puts in Hilchos Shechitah, but doesn't mention the word Shechitah. However, in Minyan HaMitzvah Kotzer and the Protei Mitzvahs, he talks about Shechitah. Lechasas dam Chaye v'Oif. Excuse me. It's also, and excuse me. I'm sorry. In Mishnah Torah, he mentions Shechitah. He says, Mitzvah say lechasas dam shchitas chayev yoif. In the Minyan HaKotzer, he doesn't say Shechitah. He says lechasas dam chayev yoif. And the Protei Mitzvahs in Hilchos Shechitah, he also doesn't mention Shechitah lechasas dam chayev yoif. But I'm not sure how much of proof it is. It may be levmana kitzur because in Protei Mitzvahs, the Minyan HaKotzer, he's interested in makatzeh. But both in Minyan HaMitzvos and in Mishnah Torah, he says clearly it's Shechitah. So I would assume it's Shechitah, but it's not 100% clear. Befrat, that according to the Sefer that I just mentioned, the Chi of Kisui HaDam is on the Shechitah. And that's what who is. In Achrei Mois, Parsha Ches, Perek Yud Aleph, Halacha Ches, V'Shofar V'Kisa, Mitzvah Shechasenu. Who? Who's the who? The Shechit, the Shofar. Kiso, V'Zgal. So l'chayra, it's Shechit is not only a Mechayiv, but it's the Gavra who did the Shechita. The Etzem, the Chiyuv sits on him. But it's not that only he's Chayiv; it's only Din Kedima. And the Ram in Shechitah clearly says it. Per Gudal Tezvav, Misha Shochad Hu Yichase Shenema V'Chiso Ba'Ofer V'Im Lo Chiso V'Ro'u Acher Chay L'Chaseis Shezau Mitzvah B'Fnei Atzma V'Eino Tluya B'Shoichet Levad. Okay, but it basically is on the Shoichet. So the we see that there's something about Shechitah in the Chiv Kisui. So, therefore, we can add to this that the Rambam Mishnah Torah saw from the fact that the Mitzvahs Kisui HaDam by Oifos that the Shechitah by Oif Min HaTorah. He doesn't quote what he quotes over here of Rav Shnayim and Rav Echad, Shnei Simanim Siman Echad, but he quotes Kisui HaDam as the Raya that the Shechitah. And that you'll find in Perek Aleph, Halacha Aleph, Shechitah, Mitzvah say, Sheyishchod mi sheyirtze le'achol Bosa behema chaya v'yoif, ve'akach yoicho, shenema v'zavach m'koch mitzaynecho. V'nema b'cho, b'almum, ach kashe ye'ochel es atzvi v'es ayol, holomarito, shechaya ki behema li'in shechitah. Okay? So now we know chaya, we know behema. Okay? Here, he doesn't go out of his way to talk about chaya, okay? But because it's not even clear the gisa over here is in Shechitah, he doesn't talk about it. He talks about Bali Chaim, okay? In Mishnah Torah, he says we learn out Shechitah's chaya from Shechitah's Klum Mekdosha. And he says like this: Uvaoif hu oimer asher yotzud tzeid chaya oif v'goymer v'shofach es domoy melamed sheshvichas dam ho'oif k'shvichas dam achaya. So it means since the shvichas dam achaya is a shechita, the shvichas dam ho'oif is also a shechita. So we're learning the mitzvah shechita from the shofach and Kisui HaDam. So Chai says pretty clear that on Mishnah Torah, it's the formulation Hilchos Shechitah that it mamish is the Shechitah is very, very important in Kisui HaDam. It's the Machayev, and without it, there will be no Chiyuv at all. And the Gavra, who is the Sheichet, has Kedima to do the mitzvah. However, you have to think about this. I'm not sure exactly about this. The question is shvichas. It's shvich. So we know in the Gemara in Kisui HaDam, the Mishnayos and back and forth. He says we know that shchita shenuruya by Kisui HaDam we pass as lav shmo shchita. If there's no heta achila, you can't. There's no chiv Kisui HaDam. But let's say you have a shvichas dam anefesh, which there is a heta, but there's no shchita, and that is ben pekua. Is there a mitzvah Kisui HaDam? Or no? It depends upon the shvichas dam, which is a matir. And l'chera, I would have said from the comparison to oif, that you need shechita bedavka. So here, the Achronim talk about this issue. The Primigodim and Mishpasei Zov, Yodei Simon Chavches, Sivkot and Chavches. So, but however, I would have told you the Rambam is an open and shut case. Not only puts it in Hilchos Shechitah, but he learns out the mitzvah Shechitah by oif from B'shofach Dom V'Chisol. So l'chayr you just said there's no chiyuv ben pekur. However, Mori Rabbi of Gershon Zaks, Zecher Tzadik Livrocha, in his Oz L'Teres Kohanim in Parashat Achrei on page 242, seems to take a double portion that kol shvicha b'chaya hamuteres b'achila is mechayeves Kisui HaDam. B'skulov also you might see about this. This is what I would say, at least in the text in the Rambam over here in the Mishnah Torah. Because he says Shechitah over here, and he says it also in Mishnah Torah. So, I'm going to talk about something which a priori sounds like a non-issue, and I'm only going to mention it because some of the Rishonim think it is an issue. Well, they claim that the Goyim did. Since Kisui HaDam is a mitzvah nefredes, and it's a mitzvah, a minyan mitzvahs, okay? So the chayre is the broch of Kisui HaDam should be over that siyasa. So what do? You do the after you do the shechita, before you do the Kisui HaDam, you make a bracha. And that's the Ram per Gidal that Alocha Aleph, Mitzvas L'chaseis Dam Shechitah Chaya Tahira, or Yoif Torah, Shenema Sheyot Tzei Chaya, or Yoif Asher Yochal, V'shofach Es Domo V'chisor B'ofer. Lefik O Chaya Levorach Kovnas Sheichase, V'och HaTorah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Olam, Asher Kedishenu V'mitzvah V'tzivono HaKisui HaDam. So that's the Ram exactly what he should have said. However, comes the Tur in the Yoredeya, Siman Chof Ches, and he quotes a Bahag, which you have to find where it is. Because of Bahag, she mechase ve'akach mevorich. You make the bracha afterwards. The af al gaf, the kol mitzvah mevorich aleihen oivel asiyosam. Hani mili betchilas ha-mitzvah, when you're starting a mitzvah. Avol zo siu mitzvahi, ube'emse mitzvah. Ube'emse mitzvah ein roi levorich. Hilkoch mevorich ala shechitah koidem hascholas ha-mitzvah ve'ala kisui acha gemar. So the chayra, it seems to be saying that Shechitah and Kisui HaDam is one mitzvah. How do I two brachas? You make a bracha. You don't make a bracha in the middle of the mitzvah, but before the mitzvah, on the Shechitah, and after the mitzvah. I'm not sure exactly how the whole thing works out, but I'll tell you one thing, Derech Hagav. I don't believe there's Kisui HaDam and Ben Pekur, according to this. Okay, now, the Beis Yosef quotes this. Let's say I didn't want to start because, the Ramban in Kisui HaDam, there's a Rashba in Teres Abayis. Dvorim Elu Kosmo Rashba b'Teres Abayis. Because of Shekain Motzah v'Ramban, it's Ramban Chulin, Pei-Vov. V'Orosh Kosmo b'Per Kisui HaDam. Because of Aleim v'Oilam L'Nogu Kach. Mishum dechshive kisui mitzvah b'fnei atzmo. That's the question: was a separate mitzvah? V'chein kos alam per gedalet adam mevorich achayv on levorich kodem sheichase v'hochi naktino nelokoyim yilucham shehiskim l'divrei Bahag. The interesting thing is in Bahag itself, in the mitzvahs kum v'aseh, he has a separate mitzvah of Kisui HaDam. I'm not sure how this squares with the Bahag. So we don't know the Bahag has a mitzvah of Shechitah, and that's what Ramban himself claims. I'm not sure how he quotes the Bahag over here. I'm not sure what's going on. Okay. Now, let's go next step. So the mitzvah is learned out v'shafach v'hu amroi yis'aleh v'shafach es domoi v'chisa'u be'ofo. So comes the Yereim like this, and quotes Gemara Chulin on Lamed Aleph from the base that you require a separate hazmona to the offer lamata and Kisui HaDam. Because the offer lamata is a chilik of the mitzvah of Kisui HaDam. So you have to have a hazmona and you put it down before the Kisui. And the Yereim therefore equates having offer lamata under the mocha of Kisui without a maisa to be equivalent to Kisor Ruach. The chos of the maisa mitzvah. The maisa mitzvah consists of putting offer lamata, the offer going on, the dam going on the offer, which is just necessary, the b'chayiv, and then another maisa afterwards. The Yereim in Siman Tofel Amid Ches and Tefus Yos and Kuf Lamed Tes. Omer Reb Zera Omer Rav Hashochet Tzorich Shi'ita Ofel Lamata L'Gmor Chul Lamed Aleph Lamed Aleph V'Ofel Lamayla Shenema V'Shofach Es Doma V'Chiso Be'Ofel Ofel Lo Nema Ela Bo'Ofel Melamed Shashochet Tzorich Shi'ita in Ofel Lamata V'Ofel Lamayla V'Imotza Ofel Tichoach Ein Mechasin Ad Shi Yanirenu V'Yazminenu She'Ofel Lamata V'Ofel Lamayla V'Chiso Ba'Ofel Nafke V'Im Kain Shneim Shovin you require Maisa V'Kakashe Ofel Lamayla Loi Mifta Kedisnan Kiso Ruach Chayev L'Chases Ofel Lamata Nami Lo Ishno V'Hainu Di Aminim B'Chulim Peri Beis the Mazmin Lei Ofel B'Kula Biksa. It's more in the second paragraph. There's a din hazmona and offer kisei. HaDam is part of the Maisa. There's no references to the Rambam. And there's no hechach in the Rambam that it's part of the Mitzvas Kisui. It may just be a kedima, a gedoma to the Mitzvas Kisui. Or a hechsher, and going into the discussion that we had in Shirish Yud. The Rambam in Hilchos Shechitah, Perek Yudal Halacha Yudalid, Hashochet Tzorich Litein Ofel Lamata, V'Achar Kach Yishchet Boi, V'Achar Kach Yichasenu Ba'Ofel, Avol Lo Yishchet B'Kli V'Yichase Ba'Ofel. There's a Kesef Mishnah there, but however, the whole thing is not clear. Because the Ram says, so shlitein ofel lamata v'achar kach yishchet boy. Why does he have to put it there? On the other hand, he puts it so far away from the mitzvah towards the end that you get the impression only hakdoma. This is not clear, and this needs a little work to develop a little bit more the Rambam. Next mitzvah. Mitzvah Kuf Mem Ches. HaMitzvah Hashmona V'Arboim Umeir. Hi shetzivonu b'Shiluach HaKen. V'Omroi Yis'ale Shaleach Tishalach Sheshalach Esoim V'Esabonim Tikach Lecha. V'kvar Yisboim Mishplei Mitzvah Zo Misholem or B'Shleimus V'Peret Achoin D'Chul. Now, let's just see what we have here. Shetzivo the question over here, just before we get started, is why is this together with the mitzvah of Shechitah? There's nothing Kisui HaDam to do with Shechitah. Okay, I don't know. It's not like the kasha, the guy, like the vel kasha, But the question is, if we have something to say, maybe you can say something over here. Interesting, the Ram puts it also in Hilchos Shechitah. Kisui HaDam we understand, but Shiluach HaKen, it's very clear. There's nothing about Shechitah in Shiluach HaKen. The only thing in Shechitah is Shiluach HaKen that if you do Shechitah and you can't make a lav and say you chayv malchus because there's no more, you can't mishalech anymore. But there's nothing to do with that reason to put in Hilchos Shechitah. You understand that yourself. So here, you could suggest that maybe because of Taimei HaMitzvos, it has the same tam as Shechitah, so the Rambam could organize it together. If you're going to ready to accept the postulate that Taimei HaMitzvos are a reason for an organizational reason. The Rambam in the Meira in Chelek Gimel Perek Mem Ches. V'omnom mitzvah shchitas behema v'chulei kavonas hatera in shchita lekala shebemitzvos v'osra shiyane oisa oisam b'shchita ro'a v'lo b'nechira v'lo yichatech eve kamo shebianu. See, here's an amazing thing. Not only the time of Shechitah has to do with Tzar Baalei Chayim, very similar to the Ramban and Chumash Bereshis, okay, but he has an amazing thing. There's an Isa Aseh Kilu of the Osra Sheyane Oisa B'Shechitah Ro'a. There's an Isa. V'loi b'nechira, v'loi yichotech mehem eve k'mo shebi'alnu. I don't know if yichotech mehem is the problem of Eben Achai, or the Esel Chatich is the problem. V'chein also lishchait oiseves benoi b'yoyim echot. There's an Isa of Tzar Baalei Chayim here. V'chulei, v'zehu atam gam kein b'shluach HaKen. Ki habeitzim asher shochvo ha'eim aleihem for efroichim hatzrichim leimom al haroiv einam ruim la'achila. Ukeshiyishlach ha'eim v'telech lo titztaye b'uhos l'kichas abonim, because they if the aim's not there and the baits in the way they are, you really have nothing. So, once you send the aim away, you're finished. Kima shehoya lokech b'roi v'apomim eino roi lachila. V'im elu hatzorim hanafshiyim chosa atera aleihem bebehemus v'oifos kosh came b'nei adam. Like so there is an element of Achmanis both in Shechitah and in Tzar Baalei Chayim. Now, I just want to focus on one thing. I'm very confused. It says the mitzvah is Shiluach HaKen. Now, it's the best of my knowledge, you're not sending the nest away. So what is it, Shiluach HaKen? Why is it called Shiluach HaKen? And this is in the original Judeo-Arabic, B'Shiluach HaKen. The Ram doesn't do it only over here. He does it in Minyan HaKotzer. He says in Minyan HaKotzer, the mitzvah is Shiluach HaKen. Frankly, this problem is only a problem in the Mitzvah. However, in the Lois Aseh, it's all okay. Because the Ashora, it depends upon a Kan. Because it says in Lois Aseh Shinvav, he shizhirnu mikachas Kan hatzipo bichloloi, to take the whole thing. B'esat seder, ho'eim v'abonim, v'omu loy sikach ho'eim al abonim. You shouldn't take them together. So the Isa is lekichas HaKen. That's very good. So we understand this in the Ashora. We have no clue. So that's he says hinu mikachas kein atzip, kan atzip, b'chloloi, the whole thing. However, in Hilchos Shechitah, in the Protei Mitzvah, it's not so bad. And really, he discusses the Lashon in the Torah. In the beginning, Shechitah, the Shaleach or Aim, Im Lokcho Alabonim. But there's no discussion of Shiluach HaKen. That's also very good. That's all I'm saying. I'm only wondering, see, we're going to take up an issue, if you can imagine the Aseh before the Lav, or the whole chefsa of Shalech to Shalach Asayim is only if you violate the Lav. Okay? If you're ready to assume in the Rambam that there is the Aseh can happen before the Lav, and the truth is, you might see this in Mo Nevuchim, because you remember the Lashon, Yishlach or Aim v'telech lo titztayer bil ois lekichas abonim. Then you can take the bonim, send away the aim, and take the bonim. L'chayra, he has in mind that's the mitzvah. He doesn't say befurish. But you see, even if you say that, it's only a partial answer. Because in some cases, the cane is together, because cane means either the mother is on the nest or hovering over the nest. The mother is attached to the nest. So it's Shiluach HaKen would mean only not that you're sending away the cane, it's still not good, but you need a cane in order to make the Mitzvas. But that won't help you that much, because that only explains in the case where the Aseh precedes the Lav. But in the case you violated the Lav, you don't need a cane in order to make the mitzvah. Just the Shiluach Ha'im by itself. So the word Shiluach HaKen is a little bit odd in Rambam. I can't help you, but I'm just telling you, it's very odd. Now, the Rambam, besides that, and this is the discussion itself, but it also is a sequel to this, the Rambam in Shiur Shishi clearly says that Shiluach HaKen is a lav nitul aseh. He says, "V'im sheyiyeh lav kodim v'achkach yinosek leaseh k'moy omroi leisikach rohem al abonim v'achchen shalech tishalech es hohem." And also in Protei Mitzvos, l'shalech ho'eim im lochla al abonim. It's very clear that the whole Aseh is only at the volume of the Lav. In Minyan HaKotzir, it's a little equivocal because he says l'shalech HaKen, shene'ema shalech t'shalech es ho'eim, v'es abonim tikach l'cho. So we don't know anything. And in Minyan HaMitzvos, he also doesn't say anything, but he said it very clearly in the Shoshim. And the Ram Pirush Shnayis and Makis is also very clear about this. In Perek Gimel, Mishnah Aleph, V'chelik Orvi, Lav Shenik L'aseh, Ein Loiken Alov, Elen Kein Lokim, Aseh Shaboy, Kegoyin Omo, Yis'al Lo Sikachoim Alabonim, Harizeh Lav, V'im Obo V'lochom Kulom, Omo, Shalech T'shalech Esoim, V'zeh Aseh, V'chol Zman Sheyish L'chazaim, Eino Oiv V'eino Chayiv Malkus, V'eino Chayiv Malkus, Be'ez L'kichosom, Yachad Sheharayocho Lishloich Es Ho'eim V'kaimes Aseh. Some Sefer talks about this, whether it's a lav nitul aseh or not, and Shaz Chuvas Sefer Chelik Aleph Siman Kuf. Now, here, Ukfai Isboye Mishpatei Mitzazu Misholem, and L'chei Kapach's translation is a little bit easier to read, B'Shleimus. why Ibn Timur translated over here Mishalem, and the same word in Mitzvah Kuf in Mitzvah Kuf Yutes, he says B'Shleimus, which is like Kapach over here. I'm a little bit confused about. Okay, in Mitzvah Shem is going to start, and just to get you into it, really the next 4 mitzvahs are an amazing thing, which is Kedai to look at the Ramban in the end of Shiur Shishi. He disagrees with the Rambam categorically, and all these 4 mitzvahs are out of Minyan Mitzvah according to the Ramban. According to the Rambam, Minyan Mitzvahs. There's a mitzvah of, at least in the Arabic, Simanim behema v'chaya, and v'omer male geira v'shois b'shesa. That's Kuf Mem Tes. Then this Kuf Nun, Oif. Kuf Nun Aleph is Chagovim, and Kuf Nun Beis is Dogim. Now let me just explain to you some of the questions that will be up in front against us. Okay. First of all, it should be clear. He says v'oz yiyu mutam la'ochlon. So there's something about this. The checking or the simone behemo, which something to do with achila here. That's what he's saying over here. The question is, what's the relationship? Are the simonim gurim the heter or not? The question is, what's the mitzvah? Is the mitzvah bedika? What's the relationship between the mitzvah? And he quotes a sifri over here. I see me sifra. Excuse me. V'omer izleis achaya she'toichlu v'losh sifra. Which is a different pasuk than he quotes. Okay, so this sounds like an Aseh. How does he construct from this a mitzvah? We have to also know. Then this is probably one of the more amazing things. I'm just going to skip over on everything. One of the more amazing things we have, which I have no clue what happened. There's a mitzvah of Bedikas Simanei Oif. The only problem is there's no Simanei Oif mentioned in the Torah. And the question is, how does it become a mitzvah? He says there was Chakira, or somehow Chazal discovered these Simanim, and then all of a sudden, what was the mitzvah before? What exactly happened? It's a very strange thing. And the Rambam clearly says at the end of all this, when he's talking the mitzvah of Dogim, he basically says since the 4 different types of Simanim, it's 4 different mitzvahs. So the Simanim are very important over here. Okay? Then, by Oif, at least Chazal have the Lashon of Matikei Shmuel, the Lashon mitzvah. Okay? By Chagovim, the Lashon mitzvah is not found. At least in the Chachmei HaMesorah, and the Ram doesn't quote it over here. However, at the end, when he talks about Dogim, when Dogim also, it talks about the word mitzvah, even though it might be referring to the Aseh, we have to see in Mishnah Torah and the Ramban, how all this plays itself out. But the reason the Ram says that it's 4 separate mitzvahs is because the Simanim are different. And because also, L'chol Matikei Shmuel said in each one of them, it's a mitzvah. It's called Echad V'Echad. But they really only said in 3, not in 4. It doesn't say it. And then, however, he goes out of his way by Chagovim, and he starts off before he makes the mitzvah that the Simon Chagovim are mufroshim b'Torah, as opposed to Oif. We have no clue also what happened over here. And the last, it's Kedai also to decide whether this is Shirana or Namah. Look at the Rambam, at least in terms of the mitzvah of Behema v'Chaya. The question is it also Behema and Chaya and the same Simonim? Read Perek Aleph in Hilchos Shechitah, decide what he's talking about Simonei Chaya and what the meaning of it is. Okay? You might want to also look at Oifes. Chaim makes a big deal about Simoni Oiflis, that they're Binyan Ab or something like that. You can look at it. And the question is, the last paragraph in the mitzvah of Dogim is a very, very interesting paragraph. And in Mitzvah Shem, I guess this will be the topic for next week, but I thought at least I gave you the Ma'amah Kaimis at least to introduce it. Have a nice week, and Hatzlacha Rabbah.